It is Tuesday, September 19th. President Trump preparing to bring his America First agenda to the world stage in his first address to the United Nations.
We seek a United Nations that regains the trust of the people around the world, cut through the bureaucracy, reform outdated systems to advance the UN's core mission.
But former UN Ambassador John Bolton says that there's only one thing that will get the UN's attention. He is here live to explain.
Also, Hurricane Maria unleashing fury overnight. A major storm roaring through the already devastated Caribbean. Puerto Rico now bracing for impact, and not far behind, another big storm heading up the eastern seaboard. Janice Dean is tracking it all.
Did you see this? Doesn't feel good to be a Democrat on this side of the protest, does it? Nancy Pelosi finally getting a taste of the resistance. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
All right, living live through Midtown Manhattan at 5 a.m. here in New York City on a Tuesday morning. Good morning to you. You're watching Fox and Friends First. I'm Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much for starting your day with us, as always.
That's right. Today, the world will be watching as President Trump takes the stage for the first time at the United Nations General Assembly.
In his speech, he is expected to focus on America First, that agenda, while condemning North Korea and calling for UN reform.
That's right. It's a big speech, and Doug McElway is live with more on what we can expect today. Hey, Doug.
Morning, Rob. It's no secret that from the very early days of his campaign and his Make America Great Again slogan, that candidate and later President Trump was no fan of the United Nations. Well, today, he speaks to a skeptical General Assembly for the first time as president. He set the stage yesterday in a reform panel meeting in which he described how the UN's budget has increased 140% since 2000 and his staff has doubled, but the results have been less than cost effective.
Yet in recent years, the United Nations has not reached its full potential because of bureaucracy and mismanagement. We seek a United Nations that regains the trust of the people around the world. In order to achieve this, the United Nations must hold every level of management accountable, protect whistleblowers, and focus on results rather than on process.
Yesterday, the president told listeners that he also wants to make the United Nations great. He poignantly left out the word again. Today, preceding the president's address will be remarks by French President Emmanuel Macron, Turkish President Erdogan, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Trump's address set for 10:30 this morning. He's expected to talk about North Korea's growing missile program and the need for the UN to work to stabilize both that threat and the threat of Iran. He's also expected to mention instability and unrest in Venezuela, as well as the threat of worldwide terrorism. Later in the day, he attends a bilateral meeting with the Emir of Qatar. And at 7:30 tonight, he and the First Lady host a closed diplomatic reception. Packed day. Back to you in New York.
Packed and a very important day, too.
Yes.
All right. Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
My pleasure.
All right. Big expectations for the president's speech later today. So what issues does the president need to address with world leaders?
Here with his take, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and Fox News contributor John Bolton. Thank you so much for joining us, first of all.
Glad to be with you.
So what's the first thing that he needs to address, and do you expect him to address today?
Well, I think the most important issues that the United States faces, and that really should be at the center of his speech, are the threats of the nuclear programs of North Korea and Iran. And I think the president has an excellent opportunity in this speech, which the whole world will be watching, to lay out the U.S. case why these programs are increasingly dangerous and tougher steps are needed, since after 25 years of a combination of negotiation and sanctions, we've obviously failed, and both these states are on the verge of getting deliverable nuclear weapons.
You know, the president obviously has had a lot to say about the UN in the past. past, he's been very bold, and now he's kind of dialed it back, especially yesterday. I think the speech will dial it back even more as he tries to probably get his way in some of these things, and he knows he can't just be the bull in the china shop. But are the criticisms that he's had, are they accurate?
Well, they are accurate. And, you know, look, this is a speech, formal address in international affairs. It's not a campaign rally. You have a different tone in different places. I don't think there's going to be much of a reaction to the speech. When George W. Bush used to come to the UN every September, he called it his annual trip to the Wax Museum because he didn't get much reaction either. I think the president yesterday addressed the question of UN reform. It's obviously very important, but I've watched these UN reform efforts come and go for 30 years, and really the only thing that will get the UN's attention on reform is if we withhold American money. If we switch from basically a system of taxation where we pay 22% of the cost of most UN agencies to a voluntary system where we pay for what we want and insist we get what we pay for. And every other country can do the same.
That would get their attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And he did have some other countries, I think, 123 yesterday, who said that they agree to work with him and move forward with his ideas. In terms of Iran and also in terms of Israel, what do you think he should do?
Well, you know, on Monday, the president met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and I have no doubt that that the Iran question was at the top of their agenda. Other issues, peace with the Palestinians, the president's trying to broker. But the Iran threat for Israel is existential, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very clear. He thinks the United States should get out of the deal that Barack Obama negotiated with Iran and the other members of the Security Council. I agree with that. I think until we break free from this deal, we're not going to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. They're already continuing to make progress. They have very close working relationships with North Korea. So anything that North Korea can do today, Iran can buy from them tomorrow.
Speaking of Israel, on the situation between the Palestinians and Israel, is the UN unpartisan? Do they lean one way or the other, do you feel like, as an organization? I don't think Israel thinks that they've been treated fairly by the UN.
No, it's entirely pro-Palestinian. This has been going on for a long, long time, and that's why over the years, on a bipartisan basis, Republican and Democratic presidents, in their efforts to bring peace in the Middle East, have largely ignored the United Nations because the deck is so heavily stacked against Israel that they simply don't trust the UN to have a neutral role.
There has been so much at the very start of this administration to deal with. Can I ask you what job you think, Ambassador Nikki Haley, like the job that she's doing?
Well, I think she's off to a great start. She's certainly taken the lead in a lot of important issues. It's been kind of a mystery to me how she's been so prominent, and Secretary of State Tillerson has been,
I'll put it,
not so prominent. Yeah. I don't quite understand that, but I think she has the president's confidence. That's obviously very important.
And she's got some big votes taken care of, too, right? She's done a pretty good job. All right. Thanks so much, Ambassador. Coming on very early this morning.
Had that cup of coffee this morning. Right. Yes, very important. Well, now let's turn to some extreme weather, though. This is also the big story today. Hurricane Maria devastating the tiny island of Dominica, making landfall as a Category 5 overnight. Another one.
This season, we've seen so many major storms. This monster blowing off roofs, flooding homes. The prime minister of that small island saying that they have lost all that money can buy. The now Category 4 hurricane could strengthen yet again as it now moves and heads into Puerto Rico.
Yeah, Janice Dean is live for us in studio tracking Maria's path. Janice, what is the latest?
The latest is still a Category 4, but a strong Category 4, two miles shy of being Category 5. And we see the pressure dropping from Maria, so we are expecting it to strengthen. I also want to point out, so very active in the Atlantic with Jose as a hurricane, Lee is a remnant low, and then in the Pacific we have Norma and Otis, so very active. Oh, look at this, Category 5. They have just bumped up Maria within the last few moments, a Category 5, so 160 mile per hour sustained winds. We have bumped this storm up. It weakened a little bit as it went over Dominica overnight, last night as a Cat 5, went down to a 4, now back to a 5. So strengthening, a very dangerous storm. Next stop is Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Dominican Republic, as well as Hispaniola, or rather Haiti, and then the Bahamas, and we will have to watch this storm. But we have hurricane warnings up for the Virgin Islands, also Puerto Rico, but the bottom line is a very dangerous storm, destructive, perhaps deadly, across the islands. over the next 12 to 24 hours. Back to you.
They do not need this again.
Yeah, this has been an amazing season so far, Janice.
Pray
Thanks
for all
so
those
much.
people.
Yep.
Okay, a Fox News alert now. A manhunt intensifying this morning for 2 armed and dangerous inmates, including a convicted murderer.
Yeah, 41-year-old James Sanders and 22-year-old Ryan Young breaking out of Mississippi's largest prison. Now, Sanders, seen here on the left, you can see, was serving a life sentence behind bars for murder since 2000.
Yeah, officials do not know where they got guns, as they say they're armed, or how they escaped, but they say it happened between late Sunday and early Monday morning. All right, 2 police officers are hurt, 3 people under arrest after a peaceful vigil erupts into chaos and violence. Students at Georgia Tech ordered to lock themselves inside as rioters set a police car on fire, all while protesting the death of Scott Schultz, the student shot by police on Saturday when he refused to drop a knife.
Come on, man, drop the knife. Come on, let's drop it. Drop it. No, drop the knife.
Some witnesses claim that last night's violent protesters were not students.
People who attended made it clear that it wasn't Georgia Tech protesters, it was people outside of Georgia Tech.
Schultz's family now urging protesters to remain peaceful. Well, speaking of protesters, today the protesters are expected to storm a town hall hosted by the mayor of St. Louis with a long list of demands.
Yeah, but the city's police department vowing to be there in full force after days of violent riots following an officer's acquittal on charges of murder.
And Griff Jenkins is live for us in St. Louis again, and he has some new details for us this morning. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Heather and Rob. Yes, last night, after 3 nights of violent protest, finally a peaceful night last evening. About 1,000 protesters gathered here at City Hall behind me. They were dispersed. The organizers told them to go home around 9 o'clock after holding up their phones as lights and sort of having a moment of solidarity. There were no arrests, no property damage, no violence, as we have seen in the last 3 days, which is a good thing. It's worth pointing out, perhaps, also that it also rained pretty heavily, perhaps playing a role in that. However, the damage of the first 3 nights, more than 140 arrests and dozens of businesses vandalized. We caught up yesterday during one of the peaceful marches with one of the leaders, Reverend Daryl Gray, and asked him, what is it that you want? What is it that would stop this? Here's what Reverend Gray had to say.
Our first demand is that police stop killing black people. We don't need words anymore. She could stop all of this today if she said that I am willing to look at the Ethical Society of Police recommendations that spell out very clearly how we can have better relationships with the police.
And what will likely be a very animated, perhaps explosive meeting tonight, Mayor Lyda Krewson having a town hall at 6 p.m. local at a local high school. We're not sure whether or not, we've asked for confirmation, whether the acting police chief, Lawrence O'Toole, will be there or not. But clearly the message is they want police accountability, police reform. We'll find out what happens tonight, guys.
All right, Griff Jenkins, live for us.
All right, thanks, Griff.
Well, the trial starts today for an Army soldier accused of supporting ISIS. 34-year-old Sergeant Ikaya Kang is accused of trying to pass classified military documents to undercover federal agents that he thought were members of the terror army. Prosecutors claim that he pledged allegiance to ISIS and even kissed the terrorist flag. If convicted, he faces 80 years in prison.
A new report says former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort was wiretapped by the Obama administration before and after the 2016 election. This CNN report now raising questions on whether President Trump's claims of wiretapping are actually true. Remember how everybody said he was crazy when that all came out. The New York Times also reporting the FBI is ready to indict Manafort, but was not specific on any charges. Manafort is the central figure in the FBI investigation into Russian involvement with the 2016 election.
And he had an apartment in Trump Tower, so, And now to a Fox Business alert for you. We are learning about a second data breach of Equifax that happened 4 months before a different hacking exposed personal information of 141 million Americans. The credit reporting company claims that the 2 breaches, which happened in March and then in July, are not related. So far, there's no word of the extent of the first attack, but the second breach is now under federal investigation. Equifax officials are accused of dumping company stock before notifying the public.
All right, 12 minutes after the hour. Remember when former President Obama said this about Wall Street?
You're not going to go to Wall Street, make a lot of money?
I'm not going to Wall Street. The amount of time that I'll be investing in issues is going to be high.
Well, the story has dramatically changed now, and we're going to talk about that coming up.
Yeah, making a whole lot of bank. And then Hollywood's Hate Fest didn't go over as well as they had hoped. How the Emmy Awards are making history for all the wrong reasons.
And say it ain't so. Rumors swirling that Reese's peanut butter cups are being pulled from store shelves.
That can't be
For
true.
good? Oh, those things are fantastic. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I know. What could possibly do that? All right, stay tuned.
Changes, and I wouldn't change it for the world, oh no, and I wouldn't change it for
All right, the numbers are in. We talked about this yesterday. We promised you we'd talk about it. It appears the Emmys' anti-Trump message and very political message forced a record-setting number of Americans to not tune in, to change the channel.
Unlike the presidency, Emmys go to the winner of the popular vote.
I want to thank Trump for making black people #1 on the most oppressed list. He's the reason I'm probably up here.
Imagine if your president was not beloved by Nazis.
All you men out there, you put that orange wig on, it's birth control, trust me. Mr. President, here is your Emmy.
In 2017, we still refuse to be controlled by a sexist, egotistical, lying, hypocritical bigot.
Love the look on Dolly's face there. So has Hollywood reached a new low after their message of hate backfired? Kelly Wright joins us now with more. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning to you and Rob as well. The country is facing some serious domestic and foreign issues, but for some of Hollywood's television stars attending the Emmy Awards, well, it seems they were only fixated on bashing President Trump. And judging from the historically low ratings of 8.2%, viewership of the Emmys was down 2.4% from the 2016 edition, as viewers opted to watch something other than a night of attacks from Hollywood elites on the president. From the opening monologue to the end of the show, presenters and award recipients expressed their hostility towards the president. Some people tweeted their displeasure with the Hollywood star's opinions. American Post and political consultant Frank Luntz, for example, tweeted this: ratings for last night's Emmys at an all-time low. No surprise, as Hollywood continues to alienate half the country. And Rob Fink tweeted this: crybaby actors should stop whining about Trump and get back to entertaining. Not interested in their politics, get over it. Kayla McEnany, a Republican spokesperson, RNC spokesperson, explained that some Americans are fed up with the barrage of attacks on the president.
This is straight out of the playbook of the left, this demonization philosophy. Go back to 1980. Go back to Ronald Reagan. They said that Ronald Reagan raised the specter of white sheets. It's false. It's defamatory. And President Trump's fighting back, and it kills those liberals. It kills the Hollywood elite. That's why they use their entire platform to skewer the president.
McEnany quite upset there. The irony of the Emmys is that the stars came out to shine, but they put their spotlight on the president, actually making him the real star, it would seem, of the night.
They sure did, actually. That's a good point.
It's so predictable. I mean, you're going to cut off half the country right away and take a sample of just that half and try to get your ratings. You're going to go down. Yeah. It's common sense. Kelly, thanks so much.
You're
welcome.
You think they would have learned that by now?
You'd think they'd learn. And the real battle is going to be, because at the end of the day, the talent, like Stephen Colbert, for example, he doesn't care about the ratings. I mean, it's like the producers of the Emmys really care, but that's not Colbert's show. At the end of the day, they just want to say what they want to say.
Well, and that's what has benefited Colbert all along. I think they should do a test. For the next award show, they should announce no politics. And then see what happens.
Yeah, and see if they could even stick to it.
Exactly, good point.
All right, Dreamers now turning on Democrats, shutting down a Nancy Pelosi press event that was designed to protect them.
Thank you for this. Do you want to listen or do you want to shout? Just stop it now. Just stop it now. Let's stop it now.
There you have it. Protesters demanding a clean DREAM Act to protect DACA recipients that doesn't include Republican compromises like increased border security. Pelosi tried to take back control, but eventually she was forced to leave. We'll be right back.
Parodontax, the toothpaste that helps.
A Fox Business Alert for you, breaking overnight. Toys R Us filing for bankruptcy.
Can you believe that? So what pushed the company over the edge? The big question. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here to explain. Hey, Tracy.
Good morning, guys. You know, unfortunately, this isn't much of a surprise. Toys R Us filing from bankruptcy last night. Another victim of the online shopping. You've got Amazon, Target, Walmart, and then, of course, the decline of the brick-and-mortar stores. Now, Toys R Us CEO says in a statement, our objective is to work with our debt holders and other creditors to restructure the $5 billion of long-term debt on our balance sheet. We're confident that these are the right steps to ensure that the iconic Toys R Us and Babies R Us brands live on for many generations. They join other stores like Payless Shoes, Radio Shack, who have also filed for bankruptcy this year. Toys R Us says they hope to stay open through the holiday season, and then after that, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So sad.
It is sad.
What's retail and shopping going to look like in 100 years?
Amazon.
It's all going to be online.
Amazon. Everything.
All right, let's talk about JetBlue. We got a big sale coming up, right?
Yes, the sale ends tonight at midnight, so you've really got to act fast. They're offering tickets as low as $39 for one way, but now that $39 deal, that's only for travel between Long Beach, California to Las Vegas. But there are some other really good deals. You can go from Atlanta to Boston for $59, D.C. to West Palm for $69, New York to Bermuda for $89. And now you've got to travel between September 26th and December 14th. Taxes and fees are included, but, you know, of course, there are a few blackout dates.
Right.
It's a really nice time of the year to go to Bermuda. Actually, even with the storms. I mean, this is kind of like peak Bermuda time, you know, even with all these hurricanes. Yeah, that's true.
Except for the hurricanes here and there.
Right.
So the Happy Meals are getting healthier?
Yes, you know, I'm not sure if kids will like this one, but they're swapping out their juice. So they've got 100% fruit juice, that's Minute Maid juice. They're swapping it out for a 42% fruit juice, which has less calories and less sugar. They're going to be using the Honest fruit juices, so you'll be seeing that change starting in November. Yeah,
well, when I think
it's all
healthy,
part of their goal
McDonald's.
to be.
But do they still get fries? We were showing a video of fries.
Fries and a burger. Yeah. All right,
got
Tracy.
the juice to make the fries.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Tracy, thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, the time now is 26 minutes after the top of the hour. And remember before the election when Hillary Clinton was horrified that President Trump might not accept the election results?
Every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. That is not the way our democracy works.
Oh, guess what? Now Ms. Clinton wants to challenge the legitimacy of the election, or at least she's saying she's not against the idea. Stick around. We're going to talk about this. You'll love it. Stay tuned.
Come on, baby, make it hurt so good. Sometimes love don't feel like it should, baby. DJ walking right across while the cops talk. Make you feel like a boss when your eyes lock, and you can't stop staring in the sea.
Good morning, live from the streets of New York City. That's actually outside our studios on Avenue of the Americas. Well, today, the whole world will be watching here in New York City as the president takes the stage for the first time at the United Nations General Assembly.
That's right. In his speech, he is expected to keep his focus, remain his focus on America First and that agenda, while also condemning North Korea and calling for United Nations reform.
Doug McElway live for us with more on what we can expect. Good morning, Doug.
Morning, Heather. Today's General Assembly speech by the president promises to be compelling for two reasons. First of all, he is the ultimate contrast to President Obama, who put so much stake and credibility in the effectiveness of the UN. And secondly, Mr. Trump has routinely savaged the UN in his campaign for president, and now that he sits in the Oval Office. He moderated that tone only slightly yesterday as he described how the UN has increased its budget by 140% since the year 2000 and doubled its staff in that same time, but with little to show for it. He also reminded listeners that, as with NATO, the United States bears the biggest burden in funding the international body, and that should not stand.
We must ensure that no one and no member state shoulders a disproportionate share of the burden, and that's militarily or financially. They deserve to see the value in the United Nations, and it is our job to show it to them.
The president's initial remarks yesterday pleased his UN ambassador, Nikki Haley.
We had to get a bigger room to accommodate everyone here today. That is one of the greatest signs of hope for the United Nations that we've seen since I've been here.
Trump addresses the UN's General Assembly this morning at 10:30. He is expected to talk about the threats posed by North Korea and Iran and the need for international condemnation and action against those threats. He's also expected to address the instability in Venezuela as well as the threat of worldwide terrorism. Later in the day, he attends a bilateral meeting with the Emir of Qatar, and at 7:30 tonight, he and the First Lady host a closed diplomatic reception. A busy day, and as much as I'm glad you're glad that the president is there in New York, Heather and Rob, I'm sure you're going to be glad to see him go from what I hear about the traffic in that city these days.
Yeah, it started this past weekend.
Yeah, there's so much security around this. All right, Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, that brings us now to Look Who's Talking. And this morning, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee says it's time for UN leaders to stop patting themselves on the back and start actually doing their job.
For God's sake, there needs to be a whole lot more
the rest of us.
coming out of the UN than a bunch of diplomats congratulating themselves on how much they care about the world when the world is going to hell. It needs to be a forceful organization that has some substance, and frankly, I hope the president lays it out there and says, if you want for us to continue to put the most of the money in this institution, then this institution better produce something. And I think that's his goal, produce something.
Well, after calling out financial fat cats, could President Obama be warming back up to Wall Street?
You're not going to go to Wall Street, make a lot of money?
I'm not going to Wall Street. The amount of time that I'll be investing in issues is going to be high.
Well, it turns out he is going to Wall Street, and he's making $1.2 million for just 3 speeches. That is according to Bloomberg. A spokesperson for the former president says that the paid speeches allow him to donate more to charities.
A lying politician? You never expect that. All right, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton here, who now is at least not ruling out.
Right.
This could be interpreted as
another.
Exactly. Not ruling out the possibility of challenging the legitimacy of the 2016 election. Now, this is very interesting because if you remember during the campaign, when President Trump said that he might challenge it, the left, including Ms. Clinton, went crazy. Let's listen to a quick soundbite.
Would you completely rule out questioning the legitimacy of this election if we learn that the Russian interference in the election is even deeper than we know now?
No, I would not. I would say...
You're not going to rule it out?
No, I wouldn't rule it out.
What would be the means to challenge it?
Basically, I don't believe there are. I just don't think we have a mechanism.
But if you remember, before the election, she said that it was horrifying that then-candidate Trump might not accept the election. So now she's changing her tune.
And she says, and essentially what it sounds like there is that it's not that she doesn't want to do it, it's that there's no mechanism to do it. And if there was a mechanism, should we take that as, I would be challenging and doing exactly what President Trump said he would do, which I was so appalled by just 6 months ago.
I think she wants them to look and see if there is a possible mechanism. That's what I think she's trying to kind of lay the groundwork for.
It's very interesting.
Regardless, Governor Chris Christie calls out her hypocrisy.
What's really clear is that she can't get over the fact that she lost the election. And all this stuff, all her talking and all the rest that she's doing, quite frankly, it's exactly what she criticized President Trump for during the election when he wouldn't say that he would accept the election regardless of the result. And she acted appalled. Remember, it's un-American what he's saying, but all of a sudden now it's not un-American what she's saying. I mean, I think what people have understood about Hillary Clinton is two things. Hypocrisy is her specialty, and she's a sore loser. I mean, you know, she is a sore loser. You lost. You clearly lost by a clear number in the Electoral College. Let this investigation do whatever it's going to do, but no one has alleged that it changed the course of the election.
It is something else to see, but this is politics, and as we've always seen time and time again, politics is very dirty.
Yeah, and there are people on both sides of the aisle at this point saying that perhaps she should let it go. You know, her whole book tour, what happened, where she has 5,000 different reasons why she didn't win. you know.
It's very unbecoming, and then that is, you know, something to say there too. Okay, all right, let's talk a little weather.
Yeah, some extreme weather to tell you about. Hurricane Maria battering the Caribbean island of Dominica, making landfall overnight as a Category 5. Now, the Prime Minister, who lost the roof of his house, saying that the country has, quote, lost all that money can buy.
It's amazing. The storm now heads toward Puerto Rico, which now is once again bracing for a major storm. Meteorologist Janice Dean is live in studio, and you've been so busy here the last month. This has just been crazy, Janice.
It really has. To see 2 Category 5s in the same year, that hasn't happened since 2007, and now we are seeing the potential for a Category 5 to affect the areas that were affected by Irma, which means the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, as well as the potential for a direct hit on Puerto Rico. So Category 5 storm right now. It did strengthen as it did make its first landfall over Dominica, and then it's going to brush the Bahamas, but of course it potentially could affect Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, and then we'll watch the Bahamas as well. Right now, we don't think it's going to affect the U.S., but we still have to monitor it. And, of course, we could see devastating impacts for Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and then across portions of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Here are the tropical models. Again, perhaps a direct hit over Puerto Rico would be devastating with storm surge of 9 to 11 feet, over a foot of rainfall. And then we watch these computer models. It looks like it will stay away from the U.S. coast, but certainly we have to monitor it, and we will. Back to you. Okay.
Yeah, so not potentially, at least at this point, not hitting the U.S. mainland, but still just devastating for those areas already hit, the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto
Certainly
Rico.
Give Florida a break, that's for sure. All right, Janice, thanks so much.
Thank you.
38 minutes after the hour and breaking overnight. A cop car up in flames as violent protests erupt on a college campus in the wake of a deadly police shooting. We're live with brand new information on the confrontation that started this all.
And one school district caving to the PC police, ready to rename schools because some think that their names are offensive. Our next guest says that they should focus on getting students their grades up instead.
And another shakeup on The View. Co-host Jedediah Bila given the boot after this happened.
How do you respond to Democrats also coming out in criticism of your writing this?
Well, I think they first should read the book.
Well, just that question. What do you think? She got canned. Was this a coincidence?
I think it was very sudden. People are sounding off on social media. Carly has that and more up next.
We'll
and a
have
new
to
marriage.
see what
She's
the
a
real answer
newlywed, but I have a feeling something
so
fishy
she has a lot of
happened
happy,
there.
exciting
There are an array
things
of
going
reasons
on
why
in her
people
life
will
as
leave a
well.
job. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we have a campaign ad that is getting a lot of buzz this morning. So Democrat Dan Helmer, that's this guy right here, he is running for Congress in Virginia against Republican Barbara Comstock. He's getting national attention today because he released this Top Gun-inspired campaign ad. Check it out.
You're trying hard not to show it, but Barbara, you know it. You've lost that centrist feeling, 'cause you've been right-wing appealing.
Wow. Can somebody pass me a lighter? Some people are saying this is the best campaign they've ever seen. Others saying it's the absolute worst. Hopeless Romantic says, I watched it on mute and didn't even make it a minute in. But Roxanne says, brace myself to cringe. But I actually laughed and thought it had heart. I know who he is now either way. So it does work because he is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
He seems like he'd be fun to go to karaoke with at least.
The Ray-Bans and the leather jacket.
Yeah.
People are talking about it. It worked.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Idea.
that's right. All press is good press. Speaking of press and something that's getting an extreme amount of attention, social media went into an absolute all-out frenzy freakout because there was a report that said that Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, your favorite and mine, were going to be discontinued. Now, it turns out that is not true, but this got like a million shares on Facebook. People went absolutely nuts over the story, no pun intended. Dominic on Twitter says, now this is deserving of a major protest. I will personally lead the riots. And this person also said that learning this was the absolute worst day of
of her life. So I don't know. I always like getting Reese's peanut butter cups in my Halloween basket. It was my favorite candy.
Where did it start?
Somebody made it up.
Somebody at Reese's who wanted to up the sales for a week.
Well, listen, I have a way that you eat them. This is the best way to eat them. You have to take out the center first, eat the center part. It's not really working because it's warm. And then you eat the surrounding area. It's the best way. It's life-changing, I promise.
What?
Really?
Yes.
Mine just cracked in half.
Yeah, I know. But if you put them in the refrigerator, get them a little cold, that's the best way to do it.
Carly, you're getting weirder every time. Weirder and weirder.
I love you, too.
Take your word for that. Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
Bye. Well, there was this police officer who showed up at a party, but instead of shutting it down, he turns it up.
Partygoers stunned by the Wisconsin officer. Jonathan Landis and his incredible skills. He was a musician before joining the force, having played the violin, as we can tell, since he was 3 years old. And he does a heck of a job.
Great job.
Yeah. All right, Fox and Friends starts right now. We'll see you later.
Bye.